leader a few weeks ago who came back from this massive industry conference. We've all been there. A notebook full of ideas, energy off the charts. And she says to me, Eric, this is it. I've got what we've been missing. And I was super excited for her. She was fired up, ready to change everything on the following Monday. And then by Friday, she told me she hadn't touched a single note that she had brought home from this conference. And that's the moment that we all are familiar with. The crash that comes right after the inspiration high. Every leader knows that rush of inspiration. You sit in a workshop, you go to a masterclass, you hear something that hits you right between the eyes, and you think, that's exactly what we need. And then you walk out fired up with quotes, ideas, and a fresh vision. You're ready to rewrite how you lead, how your company works. And then by midweek, you're back in meetings, putting out fires, checking boxes, and that inspiration that you felt just a few days ago has gone. Mm-hmm. So here's the truth that nobody likes to say out loud, that inspiration, though wonderful and though it plays a role in our life and leadership, it is cheap. You can buy it anywhere, conferences, podcasts, LinkedIn posts. Everyone is selling it, and for good reason. Because we need inspiration, we need fresh vision. But transformation, the thing that we're actually all really looking for, that's a bit more costly. Transformation doesn't happen when you feel inspired. It happens when you act on that inspiration.
It's so true. We all love that high of inspiration because it feels a lot like change. It feels like potential energy. And yet, if we're not careful, it does nothing for us. If we don't do something with it, it just becomes that another emotional sugar rush. So let's talk about that gap, Eric. Why is it that inspiration, though so invigorating, fades so quickly? And what does it really take? How can we turn those aha moments into lasting change in the way we lead and how our teams operate?
I love that phrase, emotional sugar rush. And I'm going to be honest with our listeners, we were all wired a little bit differently. And we'll at some point need to dig deep into personality wiring and all that stuff, right? Because I think it's important to understand how we are naturally wired, because some of us naturally gravitate toward the future. We gravitate toward these big ideas, new ideas, things that inspire us and excite us, that make us believe we can change the world, change our team, change our company. There's nothing wrong with those inspiring experiences, but it's really important to understand that if you're one of those people that naturally gravitates towards those, very often what happens is we get on what I call the treadmill of inspiration, right? It's one after the other, constantly chasing the next new idea, because it does make us feel good for a moment. It is that emotional sugar rush. It does excite us to want to do something different. But if we're not careful as leaders, what happens is that goes down chain. The people in our team or in our organization can get burned out on the fact that we're bringing one new idea after the other. So what can be done about that? Let's make sure we get our mindset straight here. I think a lot of leaders confuse inspiration with progress. We get that jolt of energy and it feels good. We feel energized, and that's a part of inspiration. But inspiration without strategy and execution is just an adrenaline rush. It spikes, it fades, and if we don't act on it quickly, it eventually turns into frustration, not just for us, but even for those people trying to keep up with us. It's not a motivation problem. It's an infrastructure problem. So we keep trying to stack these new ideas on top of old ways of operating. We're building skyscrapers, metaphorically, on a foundation of sand. It looks impressive in the moment, but there's nothing underneath to hold the weight. These new ideas come, go, collapse, fall through the cracks, and then we go looking for the next one.
That's right. This not only becomes frustrating and disheartening for us, but it really becomes disheartening for our teams who start to become jaded towards the vision of you as a leader, because that vision, that excitement, it never actuates into anything. Yep. The leader comes in. We've been there. You and I are both ideators. We love vision and forward forecasting. And we can come into a room and people are like, oh God, here we go again.
Yeah.
Oh no, they just came back from, oh gosh, they just listened to a new audiobook, whatever it is. For those of us that are chasing that inspiration, we're constantly looking for that next high, the next book, the next podcast, the next masterclass, because for us, it feels productive and energizing to keep learning, to keep ideating about the future. We tell ourselves that's growth, but we're not actually going anywhere. I have certainly had that experience myself. What happens is we start collecting insight, but we're not actually creating any impact. Like eating tons of sugar-rich food that have no protein.
The dopamine is firing like crazy, but it's not necessarily what's good for you.
100%. And we see this all the time with clients. They love inspiration. It's exciting. But over time, it gets frustrating because all those aha moments don't ever translate into transformation, change, the things that we're actually driving for, that vision that gets us out of bed in the morning. So I think we've made the case that inspiration alone isn't enough. But what do we do, Eric? How do we translate inspiration and actually make it stick?
That's the $1 million question. Here's the good news. The problem isn't that we keep getting inspired, because we've already addressed the fact that's actually appropriate. We do need inspiration. We need new ideas. The problem is that we don't have an infrastructure within our leadership context, within ourselves, our team, that can absorb these new ideas, integrate them, make sense of them, and figure out how they fit, right? So that we can actually move the needle. Think about it this way. We often use this metaphor of our smartphone devices, our iPads, our computers. The genius of these devices is not rooted in all of the incredible apps we have access to. That's what makes the phones exciting, because there are millions and millions of apps on the App Store you can download for every possible thing you want to do on any given day. And that's exciting. But here's the thing. If we all opened up our phone devices, for example, we would realize that we have some similar apps, and then we have a lot of different apps based on what we're trying to do. What makes these devices go around is the genius of the operating system, this set of software that governs the device. It governs the applications. It takes care of memory and power usage. It basically makes it possible for these apps to run effectively, efficiently, without crashing. The operating system also determines which apps can actually run on that device. Right? Are they integrated? Do they make sense? Can they sync up with this device? Which is why we don't run multiple operating systems on the same device. It doesn't work. Now let's go back and we think of all these new ideas that we feel inspired by. Think of those like new apps. There's the promise that they're going to help us solve some specific problem in our day. Right. They're shiny, full of promise, but those apps, those ideas don't run well if we do not have an appropriate leadership system, or what we like to call a leadership operating system that is managing, directing, and empowering those new ideas. For that reason, we created our Empower Leadership Operating System, or as we lovingly call it, our LOS. Just remembering that we need some kind of foundational, fundamental, right, kind of leadership system that helps us integrate these new ideas, know where they fit, know how to execute on them, so that they help us move the needle in accordance with our vision, our values, and the things that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that metaphor because it is so spot on. Everybody keeps downloading these new apps. You see an ad for something and you're like, oh, that app is going to change my life. Like I recently downloaded an ADHD focus app. I'm really hoping it's going to change my life, right? Yeah. I'm sure you have golfing apps.
100%.
I'm sure you don't have perimenopause symptom tracking apps like I do. The apps are exciting. You're like, okay, this is taking a device that I use and it's personalizing it. It's allowing me to use it in ways that are actually transformational in my life. But like you said, without a foundation, without that underlying operating system, all of those fun transformation potential opportunities, they're not going to do anything for us because none of it would integrate into our device. We couldn't even use all the cool features that are available to us if if we didn't have that operating system that we don't even think about most of the time. It's just running in the background. But that's what allows us to access this entire world of amazing features that are out there and available to us.
Yeah. The operating system that we're talking about is essentially what everything plugs into. It helps us interpret new ideas that are coming our way. It enables us to test them, to see, are these actually in alignment with who we are and how we're wanting to operate and what we're wanting to achieve. It also allows us to apply them effectively, right? So we all remember the days when apps used to crash left and right, and sometimes they still do if they're underdeveloped. But that's often what happens for us. We get these new ideas, try to apply them, it crashes, we get frustrated, and we move on to the next new idea. Sometimes it's not a problem with the new idea. More often, the problem is with our fundamental leadership system. It doesn't have the ability to support and empower these new ideas that we're coming across. When you hear something inspiring, like a great talk on emotional intelligence or team culture, your system automatically says, okay, where does that belong? Which tool does that connect to? What behavior needs to shift? What are the results that we should be looking for, indicators of success? And without that foundation or that system, ideas just float around and actually begin to compete with one another. That's why people get vision fatigue or idea fatigue, right? Like our team leader, our boss is making us read another book. They're making us go to another conference. They've got another great idea of how we're going to do stand-up meetings and 2.5-minute meetings and 4-question meetings. Bad or unhelpful, maybe they could be effective. But what happens is all these new ideas now are competing and cannibalizing one another because we don't have a fundamental system in which we can decide which of these ideas should we integrate, how do they get applied, and how do they fit into the rest of the way that we choose to operate. Leadership and culture and effectiveness and even efficiency is the byproduct of the prevailing attitudes and behaviors that determine how we operate. Day in and day out, emails, texts, meetings, decisions, collaborative situations, brainstorming ideas, conflict resolution, all that stuff, right? Those are predicated on prevailing attitudes and behaviors. A leadership operating system is designed to ensure that everybody is operating with the same fundamental attitudes and behaviors that not only allows people to work more effectively and efficiently individually, but also collectively. But guess what? Also allows us to absorb any new ideas, to know where they fit and how to move forward with them.
And what I love about this is that once we've built the foundation, every new idea has the opportunity to add value instead of just creating noise.
Yeah.
And when we have a foundation, when we've built our leadership operating system, every new idea we have, the books we read, the conferences we go to, the podcasts we listen to, they add value instead of just creating noise. That's what happens when we become inspiration junkies, is all of these new ideas just start creating so much noise, and we almost can't find a path forward amidst all of the new things that we've been collecting, the shiny ideas we've been collecting. But this is how, once we're able to do this piece, the integration piece, it's how growth actually becomes sustainable and not seasonal or not dependent upon the latest, greatest thing that we encountered.
I would even add to that, not just sustainable, but it begins to create a kind of predictable trajectory that over time we can look back and say, oh yeah, we're continuing to grow. We're growing in the ways that we want to grow. We're growing in the ways that are actually leading to our bottom line, whether that's profits or productivity or whatever was our bottom line in that season. It's really radically transformative. Let me share an example of where I have experienced where the rubber hits the road on this conversation with clients. Almost without fail, when we are invited to come in and begin the process of working with a new client, it is inevitable that we are going to hear all about the other coaches and consultants they have hired over the years and have spent a lot of money, time, and energy learning new ideas, trying to integrate them into their operational reality, only to find that the needle didn't really move that much the promise of transformation really ends in disillusionment. People are frustrated. When we show up, I think a lot of the teams that we start working with are understandably fatigued and cynical.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes there's a lot of hurdles we're having to overcome to rebuild trust. But here's what I say to leaders. So let me give a very specific example. Working with a client, this is probably about a year ago, we did a half-day workshop with them just to say, hey, before you commit to any contract with us, why don't you taste and see whether this is something that you think is going to be effective? At Empower Coaching, we are fiercely pragmatic. We only work with clients if what we're doing with them works and moves the needle. So we go in for this half-day workshop, and at the end of the day, one of the executives pulls me aside and says, Eric, we have benefited more in the last 3 or 4 hours than we have in the last 3 or 4 years with all of the other coaches and consultants that we've worked with. There's only one thing I can say. I'm never going to throw another coaching organization under the bus and say they suck. A lot of times they are bringing incredible new ideas to the table. The problem is that there are very few coaching consulting organizations that actually address this deeper foundational issue of what is your leadership operating system? Because we can bring in a whole bunch of new apps, but if you don't have a great leadership operating system, guess what? Those apps are going to be exciting today and then of no use tomorrow, right? All I can say to these clients is, I'm sorry. I'm sure they were great people, but here's the thing. You didn't have a leadership operating system.
Right.
And so whether you're bringing coaches, consultants, you go to conferences, you bring in the motivational speakers, you make your whole team read a new book, watch a series of videos on YouTube, whatever the case is, if you do not have that leadership operating system, you will always struggle and experience more failure than success in integrating any of these new ideas. The problem may not have been with those great ideas that they brought in. The problem is more likely in your team, in your organization. And that's can be a little bit jarring for them. But I oftentimes will then pull out my smartphone device and say, hey, let me tell you a story. Once they can wrap their head around, oh, this makes sense. For our listeners, let's just pause here for a second and broaden the conversation. We've read books on relationships, communication, conflict resolution, parenting, our sex lives, budgeting, finances, fitness, and health. It doesn't matter what area of our life we're wanting to move the needle in. More often than not, it's not those new ideas that are the problem. The problem is our personal or communal operating system is not powerful enough, robust enough to help us integrate and make use of these great ideas. After a very short while of working with these new clients, we get into month 2 or 3, and they're starting to download our Empower Leadership Operating System. They all have the same response. Oh my gosh, where has this been? Now I understand why I've been so incredibly frustrated, not knowing how to integrate all these beautiful ideas that we've received over the years. But now it makes sense. We've not had a fundamental operating system that we're all committed to that allows us to make use of those ideas.
It's so true. I recently have been working with a client who is passionate about personal development. And we love to see that in leaders. It's not necessarily a common thing. It's growing, but this leader is passionate about personal development. She's seen the change it makes in her own life, and she wants to provide that for her team. Similarly, has tried all the things, read all of the things, done all of the acronyms. She's invested in it and investigated it. And yet there's a level of frustration, discouragement, disillusionment with, why is it that I can get so excited and inspired by these things, and yet it doesn't translate to my team? And so I recently had to have this same conversation. It's not all of those things are amazing. It's simply, we have not built a structure some tracks for those ideas to run on.
That's an analogy.
Yes.
We have all these great ideas. We don't have the tracks for them to run on. I love that.
It leads to fatigue and discouragement for leaders and their teams. That's what this leader was experiencing. Do they just not care? Are we not going to be able to make headway in these areas? Are we going to continue in this dysfunction and this dysregulation? And I think the hope that we get to bring in that situation is, no, all of these ideas are great. We just need to do some foundational work here so that you have the infrastructure, the tracks, the operating system. These things can actually start to move you in the direction that you want to go in. They have the vision, and we think that all of these little pieces, these new bits of inspiration, are going to move us towards the vision. And when we start realizing that we're chasing our tails, it creates that sense of deflation, discouragement.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because when I think back on my own developmental journey as a young aspiring leader with a lot of promise, the number of people in my life that said, you have so much potential. And, you know, after a number of years, you're like, I have potential. I want to actuate this stuff. I want to realize it. I want to make it actually happen. Back in those days, in my mid to late 20s, early 30s, I was one of those people just consuming and I still do. I still read a ton across a variety of different disciplines, because I love all those new ideas. I love taking my understanding of who I am in the world around me, and leadership and culture and organization and business, to a much deeper level. Back then, what I was doing was, like we've been talking about, just taking all these ideas and creating this kind of smorgasbord, right? It's no different than when we were kids. Remember, we'd go to 7-Eleven, we'd get that cup, fill it with ice, and then it was like we would hit every single soda option there was, and we just pour it all into the same cup. And let's be honest, as adults, we look back and go, that was absolutely terrible. The flavor was no good, because it was just this smorgasbord. It was just this sugar bomb, right? It just wasn't good. Let's just say that, right? If it was that good, there would be cans of this stuff in refrigerated aisles. Right? I was constantly left feeling frustrated. I know these ideas work. I mean, these are the leading thinkers on all these subjects in the world. But I'm trying to apply them, and I'm just getting increasingly frustrated, feeling like, man, there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me?
That's right.
So it goes from those ideas don't work, and then eventually it turns inward, and we start saying, okay, I'm broken. I can't figure this out. I'm never going to be a better X, Y, or Z.
People that saw potential in me,
it must have been wrong. Or I don't know how to unlock that potential, which is probably the most deflating internal experience. I don't know how to unlock the potential in my marriage, my parenting, my physical health, and whatever area. That's why I'm saying the principles of what we're talking about really apply or transcend every area of our life where we're looking to grow and develop. I was fortunate enough to apprentice under a leader for a number of years who introduced me to what would eventually become the concept of a leadership operating system. Back then, he was trying to help me understand, Eric, all these ideas are great, but you need to upgrade your fundamental internal operating system, the prevailing attitudes and behaviors that you operate with in every area of your life every single day. Since we were little kids, through our parents, through our household upbringing, through teachers, coaches, mentors, friendship groups, through all the different experiences of our life, we as human beings have been developing our own internal operating system. Like, how do we show up day in and day out on a normal basis to any situation? And then you put us under a bit of pressure, and it really starts to test that operating system. And he was essentially saying, hey, we need to upgrade or rewrite some key fundamental areas of the way that you view yourself and the way that you engage the world around you. And I remember thinking, okay, I can do that. So I committed myself to that journey under his mentorship. And that radically transformed my view of myself, the world. It radically transformed the way I started showing up. It radically transformed the way that I was able to bring a better version of me, especially when there's a lot of pressure and things were getting a little bit hot in the kitchen kind of idea. I remember thinking, why didn't I get this earlier? I didn't get this until my early 30s. Where was this before? All these great resources on leadership never talked about this fundamental understanding of an operating system. And so, again, stumbled across this metaphor when I was reading an article about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and the operating systems they created. I thought that is the perfect metaphor to help me make sense of this journey I've been on, all these apps that I was constantly downloading, but really it was my operating system that needed the upgrading. Now we've spent years creating a leadership operating system that people can just download. We don't have to go out and find a new one. You don't got to create one on your own. If you do, God bless you, have fun, good luck. But the reality is we have provided this fundamental leadership operating system that does not compete with all these great ideas. It allows us to integrate them and leverage them more powerfully and effectively.
Yes, that's right. If you've been listening, help us here, Eric. If our listeners are following along and realizing, oh crap, this is me. They are talking to and about me. I've got all the inspiration, but nothing to plug it into. What do they do? What are their next steps?
I love that. Well, first of all, let's remember, we love inspiration. We love new ideas. We want to feel challenged. We want people to bend our brains and push us to think differently than we do today. That's part of the journey of growth and transformation. But to slow down, step back, and recognize what we're all probably looking for is not just another burst of motivation.
Right.
We need, whatever you want to call it, an operating system. What we need is a fundamental set of principles and practices that we've attached to simple visual tools, but that become parental software, guiding, providing those tracks that you and I, regardless of our age, gender, what part of the world we work in, what culture we come from, it doesn't matter. We just need a set of tracks that allows us to continually move forward in the way we're talking about. And so that's why we built this leadership operating system, and why we've just released our newest book called Upgrade Your Leadership, which is a simple introduction to this operating system so that people can read it and determine for themselves. And I would challenge our listeners, get the book. We have it. It's in written form. It's in audio form. I think the written one's better because you can see all the visual images. Test it. For each chapter on these core tools, ask the question, does this tool give me a picture of the kind of human being I want to be? Does this tool paint a picture of the kind of culture, team, and organization I want to build or be a part of? If the answer is yes, then you found your operating system. The next stage is to learn these tools, download them, personalize them so they become a part of how we think and operate. And the more that we do that, guess what? That's how we upgrade our operating system.
Right. Yeah, I actually love this podcast episode because for those of you that are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so me. Great news. This is actually what we do at Empower Coaching. As Eric said, we are nothing if not pragmatic over here. And we just have some really simple ways that you can start to implement this. If you're like, I am tired of the fatigue of ideas without transformation, tired of feeling like something's wrong with me because I can't implement all of these great things.
Or unlock more of my potential.
Unlock more of my potential. There must be something wrong with me. If you're thinking that, I'm so glad you found this episode. So as Eric said, the first really light lift, you can go get the book on Amazon. It'll be on your door probably by 2 p.m. depending on where you live.
Thank you.
Or go to a local small bookstore too. That'll work.
And request it, because then they'll order it in.
Go.
That'd be great.
But so some other practical steps you can take. If you want to go deeper, hop on a masterclass with us. We're doing these monthly. In fact, at the time this is airing, we just had one last week. It was great to see all of y'all on there. We built these masterclasses for our podcast tribe because we were like, how can we help people take the next step? The masterclasses are a great way to dive deeper. We love to get to see your faces. I get to look at somebody besides Eric's face all the time on these podcasts. You get to see who we're talking to. It's wonderful.
Yeah, as our podcast audience is growing so rapidly, we want more opportunities to engage with that community. Right. And so that's part of what these monthly masterclasses are for.
We have them every month. If you missed this most recent one, just head over to mpwrcoaching.com/masterclass and you can see when the next one is coming and what the topic will be. Each one is a deeper dive into one of our tools for our operating system. Yeah. We're super excited because we are launching our Empower membership. It is our effort to be collecting all of you like-minded, high-performing leaders that care about who they are becoming and how they are leading to come together. We're going to be a space where we help leaders like you apply this work, taking inspiration and turning it into transformation. You'll have access to all of our courses, monthly coaching, and be a part of a leadership community that keeps you accountable and inspired in healthy ways.
Let me just throw this out, Dawn, for our listeners, because I think this is the way it works in my brain. I want people to understand what we're trying to do. And then if we can do it better, please reach out and share with us. The podcast is really like us sitting on the front porch of a home saying, hey, people walking by, hi, how are you? We're neighbors. We're all interested in similar conversations. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Somebody stops, we chat for a little bit. That's what the podcast is designed for. And then the masterclass is, hey, do you want to come in for a cup of coffee and sit in my front living room and we'll have a deeper chat? And then the membership is really people coming back into the kitchen for a meal to say, let's sit down, take more time together to get to know each other. How can we serve your specific needs? How can we share more of what we've been cooking up for your benefit? And then we also have coaching opportunities, individual team, and all kinds of things that people can go even deeper. But the point is, we're trying to create some simple steps for people who want to engage more deeply, because at the end of the day, what we're really fighting for is we want to create a tribe, an ecosystem of like-minded people who see if we commit ourselves to this leadership operating system, not only do we unlock our potential, but we can be a part of unlocking our team and our organization's potential. And then let's take it further at the potential of our marriage and our parenting.
That's right. Whichever step feels appropriate for you, whether it's picking up the book, whether it's coming to a masterclass, joining the membership, we want you to take these ideas and start to put them into practice. We don't want inspiration to stop here, because the spark, as we've said, is that easy part, but the real work and also the real reward comes when we start to make progress towards our vision.
I love it. I love it. If something in today's conversation hit home, which I would gamble it has, if you've been chasing inspiration but not seeing transformation, maybe this is your moment to build a system that can give you the momentum that you, your team, and your organization have been looking for. You don't need another conference, another quote, another motivational Monday, though we do like those.
We do.
You need an operating system that helps you take everything you've learned and integrate it and make it work for you.
And maybe this is simply a reminder that growth isn't about adding more to your plate. It isn't about squeezing more information into your head or trying to juice more inspiration out of the orange. It's about anchoring what you already know so that you start to get traction, so that you start to move forward. So whichever next step you choose, start.
Do something.
Pick a space, pick a place, and start. Do something that's going to start to build this leadership operating system for you.
Next week, we're talking about grateful leadership, how gratitude shapes culture and steadies leaders under pressure. Until next time.